In April 1922, the Hinterkaifeck farmstead sat deep in a thick forest, isolated from the rest of the world north of Munich, Germany. For 3 days, local neighbors looked toward the tree line and saw nothing out of the ordinary. Plumes of white smoke rose steadily from the main chimney. The farm's livestock seemed perfectly quiet and well-fed. But when the property remained unusually quiet, a search party walked up to the house and made a horrific discovery. Inside the barn and the home, all 6 residents had been brutally bludgeoned to death. The medical autopsies revealed a terrifying paradox. The family had already been dead for days. Whoever was keeping the fires lit and the animals fed, it was not the people who owned the farm. Most killers commit their crime and immediately flee the scene. Here, the murderer stayed. For 3 full days, the killer lived inside the house with 6 dead bodies. They cooked food in the family's kitchen, ate meals from their pantry, and slept comfortably in their beds. They even maintained daily chores, methodically feeding the dog and milking the cows, to ensure the animals wouldn't attract attention from the road. Adopting the daily routine of a family you slaughtered requires an extreme level of psychological detachment. The killer walked past the rotting corpses of their victims multiple times a day, entirely undisturbed by the environment. To understand how a human being could comfortably become a parasite inside a house of death, we have to look at the geometry of the property, starting weeks before the murders even took place. Days before the massacre, the 63-year-old patriarch, Andreas Gruber, noticed something strange. Fresh footprints in the snow led straight out of the dense forest up to the farm's barn, but he found no footprints leading back out. Soon after, the physical warnings escalated. A set of house keys vanished into thin air. Someone tried to pry open the lock on the tool shed. The family even found a foreign newspaper on the porch that no one had purchased. Then came the auditory clues. At night, the family heard heavy, deliberate footsteps pacing across the attic floorboards, directly above their bedrooms. 6 months earlier, the previous maid had abruptly packed her bags and quit. She told the family the house was haunted, claiming she constantly heard disembodied voices and felt an invisible presence watching her every move. She wasn't hearing ghosts. The physical evidence strongly suggests the killer nested inside the structural voids of the house for weeks. Sitting in that tight space, the intruder had a perfect audio feed of their lives. They tracked movements through the floorboards, silently memorizing the exact daily schedule. These isolated incidents were the calculated surveillance phase of a predator. They were learning the family's habits, waiting for the optimal moment to strike. On the afternoon of March 31st, the killer used that intimate knowledge. Likely by making a specific noise or disturbing the livestock, they managed to bait 4 members of the family out of the house and into the barn, one by one. Inside the barn, the executions were brutally efficient. The killer ambushed them using a custom farm tool, a heavy pickaxe-like instrument known as a mattock, bludgeoning Andreas, his wife, their adult daughter, and their 7-year-old granddaughter. With the primary threats eliminated, the killer walked calmly into the main house. There, they murdered a 2-year-old toddler asleep in his crib and the newly hired maid in her bed. The discovery raised immediate questions about Lorenz Schlittenbauer, a local neighbor who had a fraught romantic and financial relationship with the family. Lorenz was the one who led the search party that found the bodies. Long before the actual police arrived to secure the property, Lorenz took it upon himself to rearrange the crime scene. He physically moved the corpses around the barn and handled potential evidence without supervision. These conflicting details leave the investigation suspended between a phantom drifter who had inhabited the walls for weeks and a local neighbor whose early access to the scene permanently blurred the evidence. Lorenz's interference destroyed any chance of a clean forensic reconstruction. The case remains open today because the physical truth was compromised in the first hours of the discovery. We are left with the final days of the killer's occupation. A murderer resting comfortably in an armchair, eating food while the bodies of their victims lay just yards away. The sheer patience required is staggering. They took the time to feed the farm dog and maintain the illusion of a functioning homestead, so anyone glancing from the road would suspect nothing. The Hinterkaifeck massacre holds its grip on our collective memory because it violates a deeply ingrained assumption about human safety, the belief that the walls of our homes protect us from the outside world. Here, the lethal threat didn't break down the front door in a sudden, violent ambush. It quietly slipped inside, hid in the dark, and slowly absorbed the family from within. After finishing their stolen domestic routine, the killer simply locked up the house, walked into the cold Bavarian forest, and disappeared, never to be identified. The killer spent 3 days in a house filled with the dead, existing in a state of absolute domestic calm, before vanishing back into the trees.